Oh, we're live, showtime! So welcome
Oh
everyone
yeah,
to GV's in YouTube show. This is my seventh. This week it's super fun. I have an old friend. Um, I pronounce your name, Tymon. I don't wanna.
that's pretty good.
Yeah, and your last name,
Kruidenier.
Kruidenier. Hey,
Ah,
good.
that's perfect.
Did I said it right?
Yeah, as good as it gets.
Thank you. Anyway, Tymon is an old friend from back in the days of my first community that was the Line 6 Pod Forum. This is an old print screen from the Internet Archive. It goes back to 2002. And we can even see that Tymon back then had replied to a comment. This community was created around, I think, 98, 99, somewhere like that. And I had to close it in 2005. The interface was without any internet security. And I remembered back then someone made it crashed and I had to close everything. So, hey, welcome, Tymon. Welcome to my show. This is super cool.
Yeah, thank you very much. Happy to
And
be here.
let's put a banner. And we've been friends since 20 years because of the community. I've met you a couple of times live. You have pictures we are going to share later. I have one here that I could share just for fun.
All right, show it.
Yeah. It's one from your Cynic days.
Ah, yeah.
That's in 2010. Montreal. You were in Montreal for a tour. I think you were supporting Meshuggah back then, if I remember well.
Ah, yeah. That was very
and
cool tour.
Something that just brought back some memory to me. You were back then, let's say, quite an innovator. You were playing a headless guitar before everyone else. You know, everyone now in death metal or, you know, technical metal is playing some kind of a headless guitar. And back then you were, was that a Steinberger? Am I correct?
It was, yeah. It's so fun looking back on that.
Any reason back then why you picked up that guitar before we start?
Well, basically because I was just, I think, a big fan of the band I joined, of Cynic.
Okay.
And they already played those guitars, and they in turn played them kind of as an how do you say that? Because they were fans of Alan Holdsworth, you know, the fusion guy.
Yep.
So I wouldn't say like I was an innovator. I was just like I was already on the second or third wave of that Headless thing, but it was much smaller back then. And yeah, it's been interesting to see. Like back in the day, I always used to get so many comments about everyone who thought those guitars were, you know, super ugly.
And before, go ahead. Sorry.
No, like everyone was just always saying like, why are you playing these fucking ugly guitars? And I was always defending them. And now I kind of agree with everyone, and I transitioned to more normal guitars, and now it's the trend. So
yeah, it's super trendy. 2 years ago, I was in Japan for a project for the company I was working for, and one evening we were there for a couple of weeks, and one evening we went to a show. Okay, there was a death metal show, Obscura. I think the main band was Obscura, but there was three other bands supporting them, and all bands were playing headless guitars. All the bands.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, that's the new trend, you know.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, everybody was playing a pointy guitar or something like this, and now it's a headless guitar. You know, kind of fun.
And I bet, like, because I don't know if you know the history of that brand, but Steinberger was like, for the first couple of years, it was just like run by Ned Steinberger, this dude.
Okay.
And then it was bought by Gibson. So really, so it's kind of a daughter company of Gibson. But they made so many bad like business decisions over the years, like, and just kind of left the brand to bleed out and die. And you know, I was thinking the other day, like, I bet they're kind of like, you know, it's the whole trend these days. Like, if they would have continued making those things, they would sell like a shitload of them.
I bet, and I think they were great guitar. I think you liked that guitar back then.
They were cool. I mean, they're a little bit, like characterless. Is that a word? Kind of sterile, but I didn't care back then.
So let's jump in our interview, our little meeting together today. I would say this is fun because I know you for 20 years. You were my little guitar prodigy in the community back then. I remember you were, and you're still an awesome guitar player. I'm still at the same level I was 20 years ago, but you have evolved, What's cool is back then, the community, we were sharing reviews, we were sharing samples of music and such. And right now it's so kind of normal in the internet world. You have YouTube, you have SoundCloud, you have whatever, you can share whatever you want. But back then we were a very close, small community where we were sharing and we were using the basic websites and such. So for me, you're kind of a precursor of all that, what we see today, And I want to jump back. And also, I want to add one thing before moving forward. You were also already using an amp simulator like the Line 6 Pod, and I know you have evolved over your career through different systems, and now I think you use an XFX. Am I correct?
I just stopped using those, but
really?
I've used them for a long time. Yeah.
So you're kind of a guitar, I would say, digital guitar player. You've used that technology a lot. So let's go back to before that. So how did you start playing guitar? Why did you pick up the guitar, and why did you start?
It's a pretty just standard traditional story, when I was, I think, like 12, 13 or something, I started listening to a lot of guitar music, and like Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith. Those were my two favorite bands. And my dad is also a guitar player, so those things combined made me want to pick up a guitar. And around age 16, like, my dad gave me one of his guitars.
What guitar was it?
Well, I don't remember the exact model, but it was like this really nice Epiphone, kind of hollow body jazz type of thing. But back then I just was into death metal and playing like I wanted to learn that style. So as soon as I got that guitar, like a week after, I traded it for like a BC Rich Warlock. It was the worst choice ever, because that Epiphone was probably a really nice guitar, and that BC Rich was so crappy. But I didn't know. I just wanted something pointy and evil. So
exactly. And so the main reason why you started were, let's say, Slash and what's the name of the guy in Aerosmith? Sorry, I have a blank right now.
Joe Perry.
Joe Perry, exactly. Yeah. So you started, and then you moved to death metal. What brought you to death metal?
Well, it was a pretty short path of going like a little heavier to like Skid Row, that type of thing, and then the early Pantera stuff, and still melodic and still kind of rock and roll and whatever.
Somebody's laughing at your.
The funny thing also about the Warlock is, like, I pretty much learned to play all my guitar skills on that thing, because for the first 7 or 8 years I only had that guitar. And it was such a piece of crap looking back, but I just learned a lot on it.
Do you remember what was your first song you learned, or do you have any memory of that back then, or?
I think some like Korn songs, Blind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like that one Marilyn Manson song that was very hip back then. It was on the radio all the time. Beautiful People.
So I know, because of your age, I'm a guy from the 80s and you're a guy from the 90s, just by the name of the bands. Except for Guns N' Roses, it's the late 80s. But this is cool. In all those years playing, did you quit at what point, or did you stop, or never? You always kept playing?
Really.
Oh, this is cool. Wow. Yeah, I took
Yeah,
a break.
I mean, I obviously had like more up and downs,
Yeah.
and especially the last couple of years, I haven't played much because I've kind of started singing and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But I always kept playing, like especially those first years. You know, like I was very adamant about my practicing and putting in the hours.
And I remember you were kind of very technical, you know, by the what you were posting on the Line 6 pod forum. So what brought you from, let's say, listening to Slash, Joe Perry, and move you? Is it death metal that brought you to that technical level? You know, I remember you at one point you had posted the technical difficulties from Paul Gilbert, if I remember well. You
Probably
had
ruining it like
you were good. No, you were great. No, go.
I still can play that. So,
but you were great.
Well, I just faked my way through it. You know, when you think about it, like back then with the technology and especially those kind of amp simulators, everything sounded so fizzy and kind of masked.
Yeah.
So you got away with so much slop, you know. And if you play on a real amp or like a good amp simulator, like, you know, you could have heard that I was playing really badly. But to answer your question, like the main band that I got into like after Pantera was Death. I don't know if you know that band. Yeah. And they just like, they were such a pivotal kind of, you know, really big influence on me. Cool. Like that actually happened really fast. Like I think within half a year or something of my playing, I found out about them.
Yeah.
And they were kind of my guitar teacher in a way. You know, I never had lessons until much later.
Okay.
So I just learned to play by, you know, figuring out those albums. And and you know, they have all the technical stuff, but also very melodic. So that really was my
And is it the reason, or not the reason, but I know you've been playing with Exvius back then, if I remember well. You created that band to correct me if I'm wrong, but to move forward with your learning and put your technique because if I remember well, you were quite technical back then for a young band. You were, you know, kind of very sorry.
We tried, yeah.
Oh, you were good, guys. You were good. So this is, and do you still play with these guys or right now? Or Our Oceans is another project. We'll get back to this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, coincidentally, it's the same lineup that kind of transferred over to the new band.
Okay.
But,
cool.
But it was like the Exvius from back in those days was a very different kind of Exvius. You know, it was different guys all over, and especially in the beginning, it was basically just me and a good friend of mine who just, you know, were bedroom guitar players and did our thing. And then we invited many people over and through the, you know, old school system of like placing ads everywhere and then trying out different members. And, you know, we had so many members come by in the beginning.
Okay. It's been a few years back, so I don't remember all, but I know you were posting a couple of clips from that band back then in the community, and I remember you were kind of, I would not say extreme, but you were kind of a tight band, very technical, you know, putting a lot of technique in the sound and the playing, you know. So
I love that kind of stuff back then.
Yeah. So we said earlier that, well, you started with the Line. Was the Line 6 pod your first contact with digital simulation? Yeah, guitar simulation. Yeah. Okay, and then you moved to the Axe FX, and you were saying that you're not playing the Axe FX anymore. What are you playing right now?
I'm playing plugins now.
Plugins. Oh yeah, really?
Yeah. Well, I've kind of been, you know, the whole with the Line 6 thing. It all started like a kind of a big hobby of like just looking what's out there in terms of new modeling technology, and I still like to keep track of what's coming out there.
Okay.
And just because I'm also like an engineer, you know, so I mix a lot of stuff. So I'm very just that environment of being in a DAW with plugins is very it's just very easy for me to use, and I like that interface a lot.
Okay.
And having an external box that I have to hook up and then record, it's just like a hindrance, So I've always been on the lookout for plugins that sound just as good as the XFX.
Oh.
But so far, you saw the competition kind of like taking little steps and over the years, but never anything came close to me, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And now I found some plugins that I really love and that actually sound better in some regards than the XFX, I think. So.
And what are those plugins?
Well, the one I kind of like swear by right now is the plugin itself is called Spark, and it's by a little Russian company, Mercurial. I think you pronounce it like that.
Yeah, and they make a small amp also, or a phone? Is it the same Spark? Am I wrong?
Well, I did see another like Spark thing, but I think that's someone else.
Okay, it's someone else. Okay.
Yeah, because I did notice that as well, but I don't remember what company that was. But yeah.
Okay, it's different. So Mercurial Spark is different than the other one. Okay. Yeah. It's Positive Grid that does the Spark.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I was mixing the companies, but okay, great. I tried a few of those plugins for fun. Mm-hmm. There's a few free ones. Even some free ones are pretty good. But I like to, you see all the gear I have behind me. I like to turn knobs, and I like to see the glowing tubes. And I know I'm old school, so.
But I love that too. There's definitely nothing wrong with that. Like I love that too. And if I, at first, like I did like on my whole path of like digital amplifiers, I did also like deviate a couple of times and got like a Laney amp, like a tube amp, and some other stuff as well through the years. And in the beginning with the XFX, when we were touring, we were actually also using cabs still and power amps and all that. But then kind of we got rid of that just out for practical reasons, to use in-ears and to just be as lean as possible.
I was wondering, this may be totally stupid what I'm going to say, but the trend about headless guitar also, I was wondering if it's not the fact also that they are easy to carry on in the plane.
Well, there was never a reason why I played them, but that was like super handy.
But like, you see people today, carrying only a digital kind of little effect, and they, call it a fly rig, something easy to move around. Even Paul Gilbert, I saw a video of him the other day showing his pedal board. Well, I have his pedal in the back here, and he was explaining that his pedal board is super easy to move around and plug in whatever backline gear they have when they arrive on site and at a venue and they play. So I was wondering if the headless kind, trend, all those bands I've met in Japan, and they were so cool. You could talk to the guys after the shows, they would move around in the and these guys were like moving, city from. Well, you did that with Cynic when you were touring, but you had a tour bus. I remember in Montreal. But anyway, they were saying they don't have much rig to carry, so they will
super handy, right? Especially in that scene of where there's not a lot of money involved, and you're happy to kind of break even, maybe, at that level. So, and everything helps, all the lighter you are, the less you have to pay for shipping or like expensive big boxes to check in
exactly.
And all that stuff. Yeah. So, and even back then we were like, for example, we were on a tour bus, but I still had to fly to the US, right? So, from Holland. So it definitely came in handy, the headless guitar. It was just, I could always fit it in the overhead compartment. I don't think that's allowed anymore, but back then, I never had any trouble with it.
I can comment. So, do you have a favorite piece of gear right now? Something that in all your toolbox, it can be a pedal, it can be one of your guitar, one of your VST, whatever. Do you have something that's like, I can? Good question.
Well, I'm trying to think, because like when you're saying gear, I immediately think of something like touchable, like we were just
but
saying, I
could be
almost
a
don't do
VST or
anything like
something
that, so.
you can't live without right now. Could be a pick. I'm always trying new picks here, so
It's always like funny. You have those. I know those guitar players who like who chase after the perfect pick their whole life.
yeah.
And for me, I just like stuck with.
Yeah, I remember
two
you were the reason why I started using those picks. But right
Oh
now,
yeah.
yeah, you were the reason. I remember trying those. I still have some, but right now I'm using. I'm torn in between the GP,
Okay.
the
Yeah,
Dunlop
that's very
JP,
close, right?
and this one, the new Flow.
Oh
Have
yeah,
you?
yeah. I think a student of mine like showed me that. That also felt really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, but I really like the GP. It's like a bigger jazz tree. Just
Yeah, with a little grip.
yeah,
If I
exactly.
remember
And the grip is logo. So and you pay more. You
right.
pay like twice the price because it's
Yeah. Great.
you
Well,
have
don't lose them, they last
we
pretty
have a
long.
question from Reno here. He says, question for you.
The iBox directly to audio interface. Well, if I go to the audio interface, there's a DI built into the audio interface, right? So otherwise you cannot plug in your guitar. Otherwise you would plug in line level. But yeah, I plug in directly into my RME UFX.
Okay.
The interface I use. But that's just new because I always used the XFX before. Yeah.
And when you were, I'm curious, I never played the XFX. When you were using it, were you using it as an audio interface with using the USB connection for your sound, or you need to drive it into another sound card? How do they work?
Well, they have like 3 iterations already on the market, and I used the first one and the second one.
Yeah.
And the first one was more limited. It didn't have any USB functionality, so you couldn't do that like thing you were just describing. So I always used it just as a normal, just plugging in with line level. And with the XFX2, I used it mostly like that as well. But on the latest record, I finally started using like those AES digital connections. And just so that everything I recorded came in as DI as well, so then you can reamp it without any loss of quality, And because otherwise, like I was calculating how many conversions you have if you record a DI and then break it out back again to the XFX and back in. Anyways.
Yeah. Oh, we've got Jocelyn here. Thank you so far, and I love our oceans. You got a fan here.
Yay, thank you. Yeah, I recognize the name from Facebook. Yeah, thank you, Jocelyn.
So we were talking gear, but okay.
Oh yeah, I didn't answer your question, right?
Yeah, no.
I think like in terms of like the amp sim, I have to shout out again to for that Mercurial Spark thing.
Okay.
Like try it out. It's basically a collection of 4 Marshall amps. And like I should also say, like with the XFX, it has tons of options. It has over like I think 200 amp models. But over the years, I started getting like more simple and simple. And at the end, I only used 1 Fender model and 1 Marshall Plexi model. That's all. And these days I can just get away with only Marshall Plexi if it sounds good, like and versatile, so that it cleans up well and everything. And that Spark plugin does everything. It just sounds really good for clean, semi-clean, lead, everything. So it's,
I will have to try it. I bet they have a demo or something, but I will have to try it. Okay, so this would be your favorite, and let's see. We are always. I am like this. I bet you are similar. I'm always looking for, the next piece of gear, or I'm always dreaming of the next whatever. Do you have something right now you wish you could buy, or, something you're dreaming of, or?
Not really, to be honest. Like,
you're good.
Yeah,
you're strong. You are now at the Jedi level. I'm still at the Padawan and looking for a new piece of gear every time. So.
Yeah, well, I've had. I think the older I get, the less I have that. It's the more I just feel comfortable with the tools I have, and also
I agree.
I think this whole move I made like over the years from like playing those Headless guitars, and like I also played those Parker guitars, you know, the really expensive carbon stuff, like really nice and really nicely made. But at a certain point I was just, I don't know, I was kind of also tired of like relying on expensive gear, if that makes sense. Because at a certain point I also felt like, and it also happened a couple of times, like you go, I don't know, some hypothetical situation, you go to a friend and there's like just a normal Stratocaster sitting there.
Exactly.
And whenever I would pick that up, I couldn't play anymore. It was like, I can only play on my, you know, niche guitars with minimal action, with scary things. And I just got fed up with that. I felt like I cannot really play. I can only play my fancy gear. So that was one of the reasons why I moved to Telecasters. And
it's funny. Somebody just asked that question. Please tell us about your Teles. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Have fun.
Well, I have 3 of them now. This one I just put together.
Wow, looks nice.
Yes, I love it. This is kind of a parts caster, I think is they call that, right?
Yeah.
If you build it yourself.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a collection of Fender parts and other brands that are, I guess, just do as good as a job, but are cheaper. Yeah. So I was kind of, you know, I always like to fool around with my hands and like fool around with gear and whatever, but I'm not so super proficient at it, you know. So this was kind of a little scary because some stuff had to be done that I never did, like drilling holes in for the neck and stuff.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember during our old community, the old Line 6 pod forum, you had scallop a guitar, if I remember well.
Yeah, I tried that. Yeah.
You had made a fretless guitar also, if I remember. So you always have been into modifying your guitars.
I do like it a lot. Yeah.
It's fun.
Just trying out stuff. It's fun. Yeah. And that's also like another like upside to not playing ridiculously expensive gear is that it doesn't feel like, you know, if I would fuck this up, well, these parts are like still amount to like $1,000 or something.
Yeah.
Not nothing, but at least you know, you can get away with it. And I don't know, I just, because before I built this one, I was thinking it again, like, should I go with maybe like another brand for an endorsement or something? I figured like, nah, I'm not gonna bother. I just like fooling around with my own parts and just.
Have you ever been endorsed by a company or for guitars?
Yeah, with the Steinberger ones, and
really?
Parker as well.
Oh, Parker.
And then most recently, like Chapman guitars. Do you know those guitars?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are you laughing?
Well, because I cannot make a proper judgment from what I read on the internet about Rob, you know, and
I thought that's why you were laughing.
Yeah, this is why. So I'm just keeping a distance, and you know, and
I know nothing more about it either. So
are they good guitar? I never played one. Are they good guitars?
I have mixed feelings about them at this point, and I'm not going to continue with them either.
Okay, it's all right.
Like,
okay,
yeah, the aesthetics really spoke to me, and also the principle of having affordable guitars that you know are good quality. I like that concept quite a lot. Like to endorse something like that instead of like these ridiculously expensive Parkers that no one can buy anyhow. You know,
are they still in business? Is Parker still in business?
No, they aren't. Like some years ago, I think they collapsed.
Okay.
But yeah, so I liked the aesthetics of the guitars, and they make some like tele kind of copies themselves. Chapman. But I got like 2 of them, and you know, first one I sent back because I didn't like it, and the second one I tried hard to like it. But you know how it is, right? Like if you have to try to like something, you don't really like it. So
I should try to plug you with Godin guitar. Do you know Godin guitars?
Yeah, of course.
They're made here in Quebec.
Are they?
And yes, and they sent me one. to test out, and the neck on. I don't have it here right now. It's not in my. It's another in another room in the house. I don't have enough space here for all my guitars. I think I have like 18 guitars now, and I. You know what it is. At one point, you. So, but they have a Tele in their lineup right now, so I should try to plug you with them. Yeah, let me try something. But they have fabulous neck. I really love the neck on their guitars is no words. It's very not too flat, not too thick, not too round. The fret job is awesome. The shapes are not for everyone. They're kind of very traditional. But I have one right now. It has a full it's the radiator model. Hey, let me try to find a picture quickly. And it's a full pickguard. It's kind of funky guitar, you know. It's
the white one that I saw you play recently.
Yeah, maybe that one. Yeah. It's a full. The guitar has a full pickguard, and I'm just trying. Oh boy, I have so many pictures. That's a problem, but let's move forward with the interview. But yeah, I'll try to plug you with them just for fun, and we'll see.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
And they what I like, they're made here in Canada, in Quebec, in our province. I think they have a factory in the United States also, but they don't do any imports. All their guitars are made in North America. So this is
They're still real. No.
No children labor, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody's Parker. Okay, Parker got bought, and then or is an import model will be coming out. Oh, didn't know about that.
Oh, okay. No, didn't know about that either.
All right, thanks to music stuff. Yeah. Oh, I'm taking a second about that. I need to find my Godin. Where it is.
Go ahead.
Oh, I have so many pictures. Sorry. Oh, boy.
I did play just briefly on a Godin guitar that a student of mine has, and that one did play really nice, and it also sounded really good, but very different than more like a Les Paul type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. They're different, but they're pretty. Here it is. That's my what the guitar
sent me. Yeah, I saw it come by, and it sticks in your memory because it's like it's kind of unique, right?
It's unique. Yeah. And I need to finish. I'm working on a video about this one, and I removed the pickguard, and it's chambered. You know, underneath here it's chambered. Yeah, it's. If they would call me, I have a few suggestions about the guitar. I'd rather have the output on the side. You know, I don't like a plug on the top of it, but it's a nice guitar, and I wish it had some kind of tremolo. Oh, yeah. But love Godin, Seagull. Yeah, great guitar. Yeah, they make mandolin. Yep. They make very great mandolin also. This is what I heard. I never played one, but... So, any gear regrets over all those years? Anything you got stolen, broken, whatever you sold and you should have kept? No?
Not that I can think of on the top of my head. But I think I usually don't also like attach emotionally to much gear anyways.
No, and or you do like me, you collect. You know, I got screwed once when selling something, and after that I said, I'm not selling it. When I like something, I'm keeping it, you know. So this is why I have such an inventory in back of me. So
I'm quite different in that regard, in that I always kept selling like what I didn't use, and not only because I just don't like to clutter and have things standing around that I don't use, but also just because I've never been in a financial position that I can just, you know, kind of get away with that. Just like
understood.
So, do you super minimal? I just have I have 5 guitars now, so yeah, super minimal.
But I should do the same. I should do a cleanup, and you know, each time I'm like, oh, let's wait for another day. You know, for that.
Actually, like speaking of those headless guitars that we were just talking about earlier. like that main guitar that I was also holding in that one picture, I sold it last year, and I had a hard time with that one because like I played so many tours on that, and but I never used it. Like it literally stood in my guitar rack for 10 years unused, and after 10 years I was okay, I'll get rid of it finally, because what's the point of like having it collect?
You should have kept it. I hope you got some good money for it.
Yeah, I did, like fairly well. Yeah.
Okay, good.
And,
have you tried the Steinberger one?
Super briefly, only like and it was an 8-string also, so which that I can't play anyhow. I just remember it being super lightweight. Like, have you tried them yourself?
I tried the 6-string one, and the neck shape is weird.
Did you also try the trapezoidal or whatever it's called?
Yeah. It's kind of weird. It's
weird,
very,
huh?
But it's comfortable. I was surprised when I tried.
Yeah, but what I'm a little bit skeptical about is that like that shape is like really meant for one position, but I think most guitar players change their position all the time. If you go to a bendy type thing,
but it's kind of on the 6-string. I didn't play an 8-string, but it's kind of asymmetrical. So it's kind of weird but it's I liked it. Yeah, I really liked it. Yeah. I played it at NAMM, and I was like, oh, this is a cool guitar.
Yeah, I would have to spend some time with it to see if it works. But I don't know, like a part of me likes those innovations, and another part of me is like, well, this whole thing of the electric guitar, I think especially now that I play Tellies, which are kind of like one of the first electric guitars, right? And my point is that, like, to me, it feels kind of like a finished instrument. Like, I don't want any innovation, and I think I already went down that path with carbon fretboards and all that stuff, and now I just play the most simple stuff there is.
And how did you switch? How did you switch from humbuckers to single? How did you?
I don't know. It wasn't such a big deal. It was well. Now, how it went was like I always really loved the aesthetics of the Tele, but I always figured that I couldn't get away with it, like playing my music. I just assumed it wrongfully because I never played those guitars. I just loved the look and never played them. And then when we recorded the first Our Oceans record, I tracked the whole album playing acoustic guitars. And but then at the end I was like, well, this music is already a lot like softer, and with the acoustic guitars it sounded too sweet and too soft and touchy. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this again with clean guitar, electric guitars, but maybe then so then I felt like, okay, this is a good opportunity to just order a Tele, and I didn't do much research. I just ordered whatever Tele from Tymon, the online music store, and so I didn't have any expectations. I was just like, let's order this thing and let's see. And as soon as I got it and started playing it, it's just from there on out, I couldn't play anything else because it just feels so good to me, and it sounds so it has so much character. Like right now, if I pick up anything else, it's like bleh, it sounds dead.
I hear you on this, but I would miss that that humbucker sound. I really like a good bridge humbucker, the way it sounds.
Of course, I know what you mean, but it's like I've had that question before, by the way. Like people who ask me, especially if you play something heavier, how do you get away with it? And to me, like you can do so much with how you dial in your amp and where your speaker placement or like IR sounds, and then post production, like mixing and all that stuff. There's so much else in the chain that kind of shape So and to me, the only real difference is that single coils have this like snarly attack, the chunk thing, and that I like, So
it's more. I like the kind of quack, or hard to describe, from a single coil. But I prefer, that when you pick the humbucker sound, or a creamy humbucker in the neck. I have a Les Paul here in the back here. It's a cheap model, the cheapest one. It's a tribute, but I like the creamy sound from the from
Yeah,
the neck
get it.
humbucker.
They have their place, and it also changes every couple of years, right? Like maybe in 5 years I'll be like big into
exactly. It's I think I talk about that guitar in each of my interview, but I never thought I would be a Les Paul guy until I got this one. So it's kind of weird. We have a question here from Slime God.
Slime God, did you ever get to play almost a classic marble Steinberger? Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Do you know what he's talking about? Probably
no.
Not, right?
Go ahead.
Let me see if I can find a picture really quickly, because
no problem.
Then you know what he's talking about. Like Paul was the other guitar player in Cynic.
I remember his name. Yep.
Yeah, and he played this Steinberger also that had this really unique paint job.
Mm-hmm.
It was really nice, especially if you looked it up like closely. I'm typing and searching at the same time.
No problem.
If you look closely, you could see like it was like hand painted, but also with kind of copper streaks and everything in it, like real copper. So it looked really unique. Can I find like a good picture of that somewhere? Well, this is, I guess, a very famous picture, but it doesn't show the guitar so well.
I'll take your time. I'll take a sip.
Very low resolution pictures. But other than that, like other than the paint job, it was just a normal Steinberger, so it sounded the same.
And your Tilly, how's the neck on them? Do you like a thin neck, a beefy neck? Very C, D. You know what I mean? What's kind of the
Well, the way I look at it these days is like, more than anything, it's just getting used to it, right? Like to anything. And I feel that, it's so easy to like pick up something you're not used to and say like, oh, this is not my thing. But then if you play it for 2 months, it's probably, you're going to get used to it, right?
Exactly. But I have small ends and I don't like very big necks, I would say my Gibson is maybe the roundest neck I would play. And it's not it's a thin one for a Gibson. So, and I have maybe my GP6, JP6 here. This has a very, very thin neck. So that's my desert island guitar. I could just live on one. If I only keep one guitar, it will be this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are very nicely built. I had some like different ones in my hands over the years. Definitely nice.
These are great, solid, very well built guitar and everything. Yeah. Here we have music stuff that says I like traditional looking guitars. Next build a barn. What's a Barncaster?
I don't know either.
Music stuff. Let us know what is a Barncaster.
Yeah.
So you're using mostly VSTs right now. So I bet you're practicing through your digital workstation, or you practice without being plugged, or how do you work? If you
I don't practice, so.
All right. I know you're better than I am. I need to practice every day. So, but
no, man, like I'm super rusty compared to how I was some years ago.
You don't use any pedals. You don't use any. Everything is from the computer right now.
Yeah, with especially with the whole workflow I got used to with the XFX, it has everything. So also like kind of stomp box models.
Yeah.
And I always with recordings, I usually just borrow a shit ton of pedals from friends and just to have them around and try.
Okay.
And then I like to use them just not because they sound better, but just because it's nice to dial knobs like you just said before.
Yeah.
But then later, like when I had to recreate those sounds to play live or something, I always just reprogrammed them in the XFX because it's easier and I don't have to carry long pedals. And so basically I don't have any pedals, I think, besides a Boss HM2.
Really? Oh, yeah. That was my first pedal.
Really?
Yeah. When I started in the 8 and in the around when did I get my first electric guitar? 86 maybe 86. And that was my first pedal. I should have, if I have a gear regret, I should have kept it because they're worth like a lot right now.
Yeah, and they have like different models from different countries and whatever. But are you aware of that whole like sub niche genre in death metal where they get used exclusively?
No.
Well, it's this whole thing like with some grindcore, but also some like Swedish death metal that like, because that pedal, it sounds so crappy for normal distortion. But if you just put everything on 10,
yeah,
and
really,
then through a Marshall amp, it has this like buzzsaw, like grrr sound. And like there's a whole like genre basically that's born out of that sound, and it was fun to play with it.
I remember my parents were so tired of I had a very small amp with I think it was a 5-inch speaker, and I would crank that little pedal into that amp, and we would go to my friend's house, and he had a huge drum kit, and we would play that little amp, set to everything to 10 with the pedal, and that was what we had back then. So, okay, here Slime God says HM2 equals classic Stockholm. That okay?
Yeah. I'll send you some links later. It's fun to hear that sound.
Oh, Rhino, it's about VST effect, and he's asking, can you
the effects and synths do you use? Just general, I guess, then that he means. Just what everyone else uses, basically. Nothing special. But to sum it up, basically, like some of my favorites are for effects. I really like Sound Toys. For delay, especially the Echo Boy is. Do you know, by the way, what I'm talking about now? Or
no, go ahead. Honestly, I was, let's say, until the late 2000, let's say 2008, 2009, I put a lot of time into VSTs, and I tried many plugins and everything. And at one point, I managed to get back into having the PV I have in the back, and stop. I was only playing guitar cable into the amp, and I was happy. No more VSTs, or what. I'm still using the same VSTs I was using back in those days, So
well, they did make a lot of progress in the past, like 10 years or so. Especially all those the more like plugins that kind of model vintage gear. Like old and all that stuff. It got really good in last decade or so. So that's kind of exciting when mixing music these days. Let's see. So what else? The Slate plugins I really like.
Oh yeah. I know those.
Yeah, just basic mixing stuff, right? So it's not specific to guitar. For reverbs, I like the Valhalla stuff. Sounds awesome. And yeah, that's
okay. Yeah, someone is asking about compressor. Do you have anything for?
Well, I wouldn't use any different compressors for death metal than for other music, but just also the same as like most other people, like any kind of 1176 kind of style fat kind of compressor. And there are so many models of that, like in Waves, they have a really good model.
Waves,
and in the Slate bundle I was just talking about, they also have like some different types of that same compressor. So I mostly use that one these days. Yeah.
And what software are you using as for your Reaper? Oh yeah. It's funny. I'm still using version 4. The latest 4.7. It's an old version.
Changed since then. It's still
works great. My son is using it. He records his band with it, and does the job. Now we were using a 12-year-old about computer, but now we have a brand new one with all those flashy lights. That's the new trend when you buy a computer.
Right.
It's harder to find a non-flashy computer than getting one with all those LEDs inside of it. But I haven't. We got it this week, so I haven't tried it yet. But I'm quite I bet it rocks. So
yeah, I also like recently upgraded finally after like 10 years or so with the same computer, and to one of these like AMD 12 core things.
12 core. I have a 8 core. It's a 39. What's a
3700, I think, right?
Well, we have the 3800. Yeah, the 3800. Yeah.
Well, they are awesome, and Reaper is like coded really well to use all those cores also. So it was pretty exciting for me to load up.
And we have we don't have a pro level, but we have a pair of Behringer. One is a 8 input, and the other one is a 4 input. I'm using the 4 right now, and does the job. We recorded,
probably,
and he has 8 mics over his drum kit, and we're having fun.
Good. Yeah, it's cool these days that you can get all that recording equipment for so cheap, right? Like,
yeah, you know what? I'm living like a teenage dream right now. I remember when I started, I had that. I think I had paid like $1,000 for a 4-track cassette recorder back then. You know,
I kind of wish I also had some experience with it, with that analog tradition, you know, like, because I started out just with computers.
But I had that discussion with one of my guests, I think last week or the week before, and I remember back then I was recording a lot, and let's say you were doing like some kind of jam or solo, whatever, you would try to do it in one take, you know, you don't because of that doing you know, you could not edit your solo like you can do right now. You know, it's funny, you right now, and you're better than me to explain this, but you know, you can record, do multiple takes, and then just merge all the little parts you want together and make a great solo out of, let's say, 12 takes. But back then, I remember I was doing one take shots for let's say a 10-minute jam or whatever, and and we were kind of
well, that would definitely have made my life easier in terms of just having peace with just how you sound naturally.
Yeah,
because like that perfectionism can definitely get the better of me and a lot of people out there. And I think the line also between what still sounds human and cool, and you know, because if you go too far and you edit every note on the bar and everything is tuned perfectly, like, it loses its life. And
exactly. And it's funny, I'm trying to teach my son about this, and he agrees with me that we need to bring back that kind of live feel to a recording. If it's too tight, if everything is on, you know, set like a robot is playing, it's not cool anymore, you know. Sometimes, and I like records when you feel that the guys are not machine.
Me too, but it's such a fine line also, because
fine line.
Like, there are a number of reasons. Like, I think one big reason is also, if you compare like modern recordings to older ones, like, everything is so clean and has such, just because of digital recording, like, everything sounds incredibly clear and pristine. So that also means like that every mistake sounds much more obvious. So it's not like you can get away with the same type of sloppiness that people in the 70s could get away with, you know. and then also like, people are just used, like, even us, I think, are used to things sounding tight and in tune. So for example, this latest Our Oceans record is a good example of that. Like, we're with 3 people now, and with the 3 of us, we were, before we started recording this record, we told each other, like, okay, let's do the bare minimum amount of edits for both drums, for bass, just keep it as real and long takes as possible, make the vocals as real as possible, all those things. And for all those things, we just, during the recording process, we kind of were confronted, or how do you say that? Like, with
makes sense.
With the fact that, okay, without editing, we just suck, you know. And like,
really?
all of us. And
I'm surprised.
Well, but the reason why you are surprised is because you know the finished product that we usually and that's always edited. So it has, and there's quality to that, right? Like, because
is it related to your style of music, maybe?
Also a little bit, because we we tried to write music that's not too difficult, but still, because our background is like in making progressive kind of music, we still sometimes get carried away a little too much and make music that's too difficult, I think.
And you see, my son is mostly playing blues, funk, kind of light rock kind of music, and you need groove. You need to have if it's kind of too square, let's call it that way. If it's too square, it doesn't sound real. You know what I mean?
I fully agree. Yeah, and of course, like it's not like we edited everything to death now, but it's just some hits here and there. And that's also, I think, one of these things where people, because this is a really difficult skill to kind of learn, is to, if you see everything placed on a grid, it's very tempting to want to correct everything. And if you don't do everything, then what is the in-between of what sounds good? Like what visually measures what you see being off, like what actually sounds good. And that is a difficult thing to learn, I think, especially for engineers who like edit drums and stuff. It's so tempting to just...
Yeah, I agree. And it's a super interesting discussion. I thank you for moving in that, and going in that direction. Here we have I like what Slime God said. He said you didn't miss much except for a lot of... We were talking about the 4-track cassette back when he posted this. And we have a Rhino here that's asking about string gauge. So...
Yeah, I've been using for a long time. I've been using on the lowest string 0.46, so just normal. And then the highest. So those are the first 3 strings. The heavy strings are from a 0.10 set, and the light strings are from a 0.09 set.
Okay. And what tuning are you using these days?
That's just for E standard.
E standard.
And then these days I use like these are my E standard guitars, and also drop D I'm using a lot these days. But I mean, that's just, of course, the same gauge. And then on the new Our Oceans record, we also have some like with this guitar. And this one is tuned to D standard or drop C.
Okay.
So that's a little lower.
Oh, it's the Motley Crue tuning.
Is it?
Yeah. Motley Crue is a full tone down. Full tone down. So
and Death also. So I played that tuning for a long time.
Because my oldest son is back into bass, and I have tuned one of my and he's into Motley Crue and all the 80s band, and he was playing this. So I tuned one of my guitar with. We learned a couple of Motley Crue songs, and it's funny, but because back in the 80s when I started, we didn't add. We had no internet, couple of guitar magazines, but I was wondering how they had that lower kind of sound, nobody told me. And now I just tune a guitar properly for their music, and it's so easy. I was trying to learn their songs back then, and I was like, how did they play this,
Right.
But now it's a full tone. It's instead of a regular E, your E, A, D, whatever, G, B, E, you go D, G, C.
Yeah,
F.
Exactly.
You know what I mean. But it's a full tone.
So that's the same tuning, and then, but like with the E tuning, going to drop D, we go to drop C. Then also.
What gauge are you using for that tuning? I'm curious. You said I'm using 11 on my side. 1148. I think it's 1148.
I think I'm doing 1154.
Oh yeah, to go and drop. Yeah, if you go and drop,
If I go to drop C, then it definitely needs some kind of
a beefy string in that case. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
You toured with Cynic and your other bands, am I correct? And I have a question. What did you use backline back then, or you always had your own gear?
Always our own gear, except for I think I was talking about it before very briefly, is that in the beginning, I think only for the first or maybe first 2 tours, we still used real cabs and power amps. And then we were already using XFX, but then just plugging it into to whatever caps and amps they had. But then after that, we transitioned to using in-ears.
Okay.
And then we didn't.
I'm curious, if you go on tour, let's say with Our Oceans, are you going to use backline, or are you going to have? Are you planning any tour right now?
Not really. No, we did, like, before this whole virus thing happened, we did like some first kind of warm up shows to kind of see how it was going.
Yeah.
And was kind of meh, because long story short, I started singing, but singing is really hard, well, for me at least. And especially there's this one little technical thing that I've been dealing with the past 2-3 years or so. And so I really had to see how that was going live. And I had like 2 maybe really terrible shows and 2 mediocre ones. But it was also like the worst fucking timing, in that my voice was just gone from over practicing. And then I also caught a cold, and I was like, first time singing live, and my voice was just a train wreck anyhow.
And I remember in Cynic you were doing all the growls, the growling. So how did you go from this to that new?
Well, but the growls were never like I'm not even aware in my head that I did that back then. I never considered myself to be able to do that. I was just like, bleh. Like,
yeah.
There was no technique involved, anywhere, and I lost my voice like every couple of days when I was doing that on tour, and it also sounded terrible. So that was
you sounded well. The evening I saw you guys in Montreal, you sounded right. So, but what brought Tymon to singing? You moved from, you were a guitar player, then you could not find a singer. I know a few people that started singing after
something like that. It was like for the first Our Oceans record, we intended it to release it with a friend of mine, a woman on vocals. And that's actually how the whole process started, the whole project, because I wanted to kind of write songs for her to sing. But then that kind of fell apart, our collaboration. And then, but that was at a point where the whole CD was already kind of finished. And so I was kind of stuck with a whole album full of songs, and we did a crowdfunding for it. So people were waiting for the album. And so then when that happened, when the singer and I had a fallout, basically, I was thinking like, okay, should I, search for someone else? But then at the same time, I just, out of a hobby, or I don't know, it's just coincidence, I started like singing, like doing these practice routines, and I had all these practice CDs and MP3s to sing along. And I started that like half a year earlier, like prior to all that stuff happening. And then also like the whole Our Oceans record is like super personal. Like all those songs were kind of like about, touchy-feely stuff that just happened in my life. So when all these things came together, it was like, okay, it's pretty obvious, I guess, that I should do it myself. And because I didn't, I was just singing for half a year, so I was like pretty crap and still very inconsistent. So I just told myself, I'm just going to get this done, whatever it takes, and with whatever Melodyne tuning and thousands of takes, whatever, I'll learn to do it later for real. And that's how it started.
Okay. And Jocelyn here is saying that's why there's no live videos.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope they don't surface either.
I think you're too hard on yourself. You should.
Everyone is telling me that with vocals, and I've been fucking sick of it. But no, trust me, like it has been bad. But on the upside, I had some breakthroughs recently. Like I've tried many teachers, like singing teachers.
Yeah.
And oh man, like that's a whole rabbit hole, by the way. Like it's so different than learning guitar. With guitar, it's like basically pretty much agreed upon what's good technique, at least for different styles, Yeah. But with singing, there's like so many schools of thought that just completely disagree with each other. So I would go with my problems to one coach, and they would say like, "Oh, do this and that," and I go to another coach, and they say exact opposite. And
well, in guitar, somebody will tell you to hold the pick that way, another one the other way, and
yeah, there's a little bit of that. Yeah,
and I remember when I started, I was learning stupid songs. You're 16 and you want to rock, and the guy is teaching you whatever. But yeah, I think it depends. Same on when I did piano earlier in my life, and no, I think it's kind of
maybe actually you're right. It's just maybe with guitar it came more naturally to me, so I didn't have to kind of go out and look what's out there in terms of what could help me. So maybe it's just like something that I didn't see in the guitar world. That's very possible.
Exactly. Here, a very good question from Rhino, and I have the same question for you. Where to start learning to sing?
Yeah, how to answer that? It's like part of me wants to say like maybe it was useful the way I did it, where I just went on YouTube and searched for all the vocal tutorials I could find, and there are hundreds of videos from like some very reputable teachers and also a lot of crap.
Like everything else.
Yeah, but another part of me is like, well, like all great singers to me, like the singers that I love, didn't have any formal training and figured it out themselves by just trusting their intuition and lots of experimentation. And I think that is just where it's at, and that's probably true for most, like for guitar as well. I think as far as my favorite guitar players were are kind of trained like that as well, I think. So but whatever way you spin it, whether you take lessons or whether you get your information from videos or whatever, it's the only thing that is consistent is that you just have to spend a lot of time experimenting.
You know what? I think what breaks us, and I'm part of this. I play guilty on this. I don't like to hear myself. When you're, let's say, when you start learning the instrument, sometimes they will ask you to count. Count the beats and everything, and you don't want to hear yourself or play the notes. And when you're learning bands, for example, it's good. It's a good thing to sing the note at the same time you're learning the bending the note, and you don't like to hear yourself. So maybe this is why many people don't want to try learn. I'd love to know. I'd love to know how to sing. Just to grab a guitar, do a couple of chords, and sing along.
No, I'm super confident that pretty much everyone can learn at least a kind of decent level, because I know where I came from, and it's so unnatural for me to sing. So if I can do it, then anyone can, I think.
I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes right now.
But it is very true what you just said. Like it sounds so silly, but that I think is the most important thing. If you want to learn to sing, is just you have to get used to the fact that other people are going to hear you fail, whether it's your neighbors or your roommate or your family, because there's just no way around it. And for some reason with the guitar, when you're, even then, like you just said, when you're maybe practicing your bends that are out of tune, it's still somewhat accepted, because if someone else hears you, it's like, oh, he's just practicing. But with vocals, it's like immediately, oh, that guy cannot sing, you should stop.
You're right.
Yeah, you should, you have to get over that. And still these days, I'm just living in a normal house. So when I'm practicing loud, I'm very sure that if people pass by on the streets, they can hear me or whatever. But you just have to tell yourself at some point, fuck it, I want to learn. And
you're maybe convincing me to try to start at least. Here we have Jocelyn that is teasing you, I think, regarding your videos that are not going live.
Yeah.
I think he's teasing you. Back to guitars, and we'll go back to singing, but back to guitars. Any guitar players right now that are still making you like listen to guitar music, or do you have any maybe old ones, a new breed, are you keeping track with what's coming out right now, or
really, to be honest?
Okay.
And I think, if anything, I'm kind of put off by instrumental music these days. Like, not instrumental music per se, but what comes out now. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if I should say it, because I don't like to spin negativity too much. But that, like, all those people with their headless guitars, kind of that sound these days. It's, I think, so many people, so many players sound exactly the same. And
I agree.
Yeah, and they all have like the same bag of tricks. Whereas, like, back in the day, people, like, the musicians had like kind of particular, or how do you say this, like kind of a characteristic little traits to their playing, and you could tell, like, oh, this kind of slide thing is Vi, or this kind of thing. But these days, everyone has the same tricks, and it's getting annoying to me, because it's like they rely so much on those tricks, those little bends and slides and stuff, and it's like, as soon as I hear it these days, I'm like, turn it off.
Okay. But
maybe I'm a grumpy old guy.
I do agree in some point. And one thing that really, I went to NAMM this year, and what thing really surprised me is that low kind of chugging stuff. Everybody's tuned low right now, and you would go to, let's say I have a Rev t-shirt, let's say you go to the Rev booth, and everybody plugged into those amps were like chuck. You go to the Solar booth, with the guitars, and everybody it was everywhere chugging, and I was like, what's the, nobody plays blues anymore, nobody plays rock and roll or whatever, it's like, and I was like, am I too old? I was like,
probably, but well, then so am I. But
but
it's true. Like, it's like, actually, I forgot that whole school of like players. But it's either people who actually learn how to play, and I have to give like credit where credit is due. Is like the technical playing is on a really high level now.
It's here. It's here.
Well, so that's cool. That I like, but then everyone sounds the same, and the chugging thing is like, I just cannot take it seriously anymore. All the chugging, especially when you hear it in a full band production, where everything has this overproduced, like super loud smacking, drum tones, and the super low rumbling bass, and everyone is doing it, and it just sounds like a fucking joke to me now. It's not heavy at all. It's just like stupid.
On my side, it's on YouTube. Each time you look at let's say a demo of something, they need to chug all very low tuning guitars, and I'm like, I don't want to hear this. Can you play some kind of regular rock with that pedal or whatever?
I had, like, before we had this call today, this chat, I was looking at reviews for this new Neural DSP plugin that came out, and I think it's sounding good, but I have exactly the same thing. Like, every demo and review I found, like, was like jerk. Like, okay, I'm sure the plugin can do that, but
you have. We're lucky. If you keep looking, usually you find something that will be more in your taste. But I would say most of the YouTubers are, let's say, heavy chugging or whatever. But I think it's a trend right now. Like back in the 80s, everybody was doing tapping and trying to, so it's a decade trend right now. We'll see what 2020 will bring to us. And it's funny because I'm just going back to my son. And when I was his age, when I started, I was into metal, and he's into funk and blues. So I'm kind of,
that is curious.
And all his friends that come here are into that same kind of music. And I was surprised the first time. They called me the shredder. When I play with them, they call me, I'm not a shredder, but they call me, your daddy, he cranks the amps and lots of distortion. And he's like, but it's, but the younger generation is more into kind of blues, SRV stuff, funk. My son is, I don't know all the bands he's into, but but it's funk music, when he plays. And
so funny because, like, and then you have the taste of what, like, the whole thing is reversed, like, as to, like, what a dad is supposed to listen to, and the children.
And I'm the one that brings them. We saw Sons of Apollo. It's the last show we saw before the pandemic. They were in Montreal, and I'm a huge fan of Portnoy. But my son also he likes Portnoy. So we went to see them. We saw the Aristocrats with Guthrie Govan and Marco Minman. He's an awesome drummer. So anyway, but I'm the heavy daddy, and he listens to. And my oldest listens to Motley Crue and the 80s stuff, but I grew up with this, so that's fine. It's cool. Have you ever met any of your idols or whatever, a starstruck moment, somebody that you really admire in the guitar community, or an artist, or no? And you were kind of, I'm meeting you.
Well, I think, like, first off, I don't have that personality that's like easily impressed by meeting. Like, I don't get starstruck or something. I think I don't, like, when I see people do that, I'm always like, but why? Like, we're all human beings, right?
Anyways,
so I'm not very vulnerable to that. But and then also, like, my biggest idols are like Alan Holdsworth, and he plays for like a couple of people, and you can just walk up to him, and so well, not anymore because he's dead.
Not anymore,
but when he did play, you could just go shake his hand and say, "Cool show." So that's pretty much it. And then I did have, which is kind of funny in retrospect, is like with that whole scene of Cynic, when I joined that band. Like, that band was my favorite band before I joined them.
Wow!
So I kind of had it with those guys. They were kind of my idols in a way. But then there was also very, like, kind of that whole experience of like me, getting to know people for real. That are, first you see them as idols, and you have posters on the wall with them, and then you get to know them and you play with them as equals. That was a very interesting experience.
I bet. I really bet. This is something, I don't have any artists in mind right now, but let's say I could play with one of, let's say Paul Gilbert. I really like Paul Gilbert. So let's say I could play with him. I would be like, wow, I'm playing. And you were recruited to play with Cynic. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah. So
let's say Paul Gilbert would recruit me. I would like, oh my, it must be something.
Yeah. It did feel like really unreal for the first year or so.
I bet.
But then after that was, and also in that whole, because Cynic is like part of the whole community of like with players from Death and all and everything as well. We talked about earlier. So I got to meet all these guys as well, just on the road, that came out to shows and whatever.
Wow.
So that all went from like, back in my teen years, looking through the CD booklets at pictures, like, then all of a sudden I know all these people and they know me as well, so that's kind of very unreal. But yeah, I mean, you get used to that kind of stuff really fast.
It's cool story. I'll just say a quick anecdote. I'm like you. I'm not. It takes a lot to impress me, when I meet people, and we're all human beings and such. But I won't name anybody, but I was super disappointed at NAMM. I came across a few of those guitar players I listened to, and most of them, they don't fucking care. They were. I was like, okay, so move. I was
in their defense, because I don't know, of course. I can also imagine that if you're someone who has kind of a big reputation and you go to NAMM, that must be fucking tiring, No,
but
everyone wants to talk to you.
Without saying any names, you just walk, you meet him, and you just come across and you say, "Hey, can I?" And I listen to your music, and but he's like, "Fuck you, man."
Okay.
We'll stop there. But I have met some very cool persons over there.
Most of them are super nice, right?
One name that comes to mind is Doug Aldrich.
That sounds familiar.
Doug Aldrich. I don't remember for which band he plays, but I came across the guy, and he was like, "Oh, you know me," and he was like super happy that I was talking to him. So that was funny. I have a good question. Rest in peace, Sean. But somebody, Slime God, is asking. Do you have any favorite moment with Sean?
Wow. I didn't really think about that, so I'm not sure. But I think
he was an awesome drummer. He was.
He's definitely.
I was a bit shocked when I learned that he passed away.
Me too. It was actually I was like full circle talking about NAMM, and like I was actually always also supposed to go to NAMM and visit Sean at the same time, because I didn't see him for a long time, and it was kind of a really cool thing to combine. But that kind of fell through, and then we didn't meet, and then he died. Like so that was Anyhow, to answer that question, I think, but that's just because the whole period of when I was in the band as well, that was very different, because then I worked with the guy. So if I go back earlier when I was still a fan, then I think the early Cynic material, that first demo, or no, the third demo, I think it is, the last demo they did before doing their first album. There's a song on there, Pleading for Preservation. And that song had, I don't know, that was so special to me, that song.
Great.
Including the drums. Yeah.
Great. Hey, time flies. We've been together over an hour and 20 minutes. Yeah. This is awesome. Okay, I have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
That's a crappy question. No,
it's a good one. As a musician or whatever.
Yeah. Well, lately I've been focusing more on my mixing work, and I would really like to do that more.
Okay.
Because I love doing it, and I think I'm getting better at it also. So that's a good thing. And then with music, I just really hope I can stabilize my singing performance, and just so that I can do that just as playing the guitar.
We wish you all the best on this.
Yeah.
And my other question is, what do you think will be the next big thing in music in the coming years? I see the past 10 years as a new revolution in guitar modeling and affordable gear, because it's incredible. We live in super great time. I have a studio here that cost me some money, but way more cheaper than, let's say, 20-30 years ago. We're all fully equipped. We can record stuff almost professionally. So what do you see because you're in that environment, do you see anything coming in, or what's your guess, or it's time to
I don't know. I honestly haven't given this much thought either, so
I'll go just open the discussion. I see with the pandemic and all that, stay at home movement, I think what we're doing right now will be even more popular. I'm trying to coach my son to start giving online lesson. He's already a drum teacher. So I'm saying you're all set up. You could just do drum session online with students and stuff. I don't know, maybe live music will be more from live session like we're doing. I don't know, but do you have any
I did give that some thought, because I've also seen that happen, like when I go to my Facebook and there, because I have a lot of musicians on there, and I see the whole streaming thing is incredibly besides that it's popular, it's also kind of accepted or something, that it's not just a lot of musicians doing it and people watching it. So I think that's cool. And also for me personally, that's kind of something I'd like to explore more, because part of what makes performing live right now for me hard is that it's hard to hear yourself with singing. And when you're playing just in your room at a lower volume, it's much easier to do. So that is interesting for me also to explore. So I was thinking about doing that. But then when thinking about whether it's going to be a trend or something, I don't know when things are going to get back to normal. I think everyone is asking themselves whether the normal will be the full normal we had before.
Exactly.
And so I don't know what will stick and what will go back to how it was, but I'm curious to see.
Same on my side. thank you very, very much. That was fun. I could keep going and going, and I know it's late on your side, and I don't want to hold you. We almost beat my record. I think last time we were in that around over an hour and 20 minutes, like we did today. So this is great.
Yeah, it's super nice.
I have my next guest will be Stuart Bull from Lick Library. I managed to. He will be part of my next interview, and thank you very much. Thanks everyone for watching, and stay tuned, subscribe to my channel, and see you next week. And thank you very much again, Tymon. That was super
thank you
cool.
too, man. Good luck with your show.
It's a fun show. It's a humble show.
I like watching it as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. See you soon. And stay strong, stay positive, stay healthy, stay safe. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.